Happy Wednesday, everybody. Let's get weird. As you may have heard, the latest smear from the left and their media allies about vice presidential candidate Senator J.D. Vance is that he's weird. Yes, the same people who want to trans your kid, have abortion on demand, and open the borders say that a U.S. military veteran who is a happily married father from the heartland is weird. But get this, their talking points are working. We've got the data to back this up. We're going to break down how conservatives need to fight back. And we'll break down the worst thing that's happened on Ballerina Farm and discuss the popular Homestead social media account with 17 million. Yes, 17 million combined followers. And we haven't heard from Mayor Pete Buttigieg in a while, but he's back, letting men of America know that the slaughtering of their children will set them free. How sick is that? Plus, I'll introduce you to my producer today in a special Devil's Advocate segment. All that and more on today's episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. It's a new season of The Liz Wheeler Show. What this show won't be: boring, old, ineffectual commentary. Go tune into Fox if you want the generic political yammering that got us into this mess. Small assumptions allow big lies. So The Liz Wheeler Show will challenge everything. On this show, it's be based or our country dies. What does it mean to be based? Stay tuned. Because we believe in spiritual warfare, we begin the show with a prayer. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl through the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. There is spiritual warfare around us all the time. You and I, we're part of it, whether we acknowledge it or not. And it is time that we, as conservatives, as Republicans even, acknowledge this as we fight the absolute evil that is taking grip in our country. And part of acknowledging that is rooting our worldview in reality, which is what we're going to do on this show today. Today's show is powered by First Cup Coffee. I'm so thankful for this sponsor. I'm so proud to have First Cup Coffee as a sponsor. Any company that is based enough, brave enough to advertise on this show, to sponsor this show, deserves our support. My husband's favorite blend is called the Boston Common, which is a medium dark roast. He loves it. You should try it. You should go to firstcup.com, use my promo code Liz, and you can save an additional 10% on your order. If you subscribe, you can save an additional 10% for the life of that subscription. Again, any company brave enough to support this show deserves our support. Go ahead, snag your bag, go to firstcup.com, use my promo code Liz, and save 10% on your order. Okay, here's the story of the day and the based take on it. J.D. Vance is weird is the new line of attack from the Democrats on the Trump-Vance campaign. Weird is their specific word of choice, and so we've been hearing this word incessantly. I'm talking like maybe a million or trillion times. Take a listen to this.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Super weird idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate, they're weird. Deeply and profoundly weird.
They are weird.
These Republicans just being weird, it's just weird. It's really weird.
I love how we have Eric Swalwell leading the charge on calling someone else weird. Like, yeah, there's your guy if you want to land that hit. Now, this is obviously coordinated language from these losers in the mainstream media. They were clearly given talking points. The question is, where did they get them from? Well, undoubtedly, they got the word weird from focus groups who most likely found that the word weird resonated with liberal women voters. But also probably because focus groups found that when Kamala Harris runs on her own record, people ardently dislike her and reject her policies, like Kamala the border czar, who allowed the border invasion, and Kamala the commie, who bailed Black Lives Matter criminals out of jail. So instead of running on Kamala, they're trying to run against J.D. Vance. And yes, obviously, it's ironic that they're calling J.D. Vance weird. This is from the party that says men can be women. J.D. Vance is supposed to be weird, say the pervs who give porn to kids in school. J.D. Vance is supposed to be weird, say the leftists who do polycules and thruples. J.D. Vance is supposed to be weird, say the ecosexuals who sexualize trees. J.D. Vance is weird, say the commies who worship Satan. J.D. Vance is supposed to be the weird one, say the people who gave us Rachel Levine, Leah Thomas, Dylan Mulvaney, that pup handler luggage thief from the Biden administration, bearded men wearing dresses in the White House, topless freaks on the White House lawn, screaming psychos in those pink hats, the satanic Olympic opening ceremonies, drag queen story hour, and you remember that paid influencer, Cooper, the White House intern? But J.D. Vance, he's supposed to be the weird one. Yeah, obviously not. This strategy is actually very elementary. It's meant to appeal to the shallowest part of human nature. But here's the reason why. The reason why they're utilizing this strategy. They are trying to assassinate J.D. Vance's character to distract from the fact that the Democrats are perverted commies who hate us. And J.D. Vance has committed the cardinal sin against the commies of being a conservative, Christian, white man, happily married, with kids, who goes to church and loves America. The Democrats hate that. But believe it or not, that's not actually the point. The point is that the Democrats have something that Republicans don't have. Democrats have killer instinct. Democrats understand that even though it should be, presidential campaigns are not policy debates. Democrats understand how to use the culture or even human nature to win because they control the culture and they know how to harness it to win election. And it doesn't matter, no matter how personal, how vicious, how intimate, how immoral, or how false these personal attacks are, the Democrats are willing to go there if it will help them win. This killer instinct, they will stoop to any level. They want victory more. They can taste it. They're chasing it. Now, you and I know that we are in the morally superior position here. Our policies are right and proper. But in a purely competitive sense, the Democrats want it more. So what are we going to do about it? Now, I'm not suggesting that we stoop to their level. I'm not suggesting that we engage in unethical, even immoral tactics. I'm certainly not suggesting that we cheat. But the reason that I'm so fired up about this today is because the Democrats' strategy is working. The poll shows that the J.D. Vance's popularity rating just in the last week has dropped 9 points. You can take a look at this. 9 points. There's even a report that President Trump is regretting the fact that he picked J.D. Vance to be his vice presidential running mate. Now, I hope this is not true. I hope this is a rumor as it was reported. So this paints the J.D. Vance's weird language in a little bit different light, doesn't it? It's not just language that's meant to appeal to liberal women. It's a psyop intended to also target how Trump feels about J.D. Vance in order to breed chaos in the Trump campaign in these final months before the election. The Trump campaign better not let this happen. But again, the left has this killer instinct. They have studied their enemy. They know their enemy. You remember after Sean Spicer, the former press secretary for the Trump administration, left the White House, there was a report about him in a book. And this report about Sean Spicer said that Trump liked Sean Spicer a lot. I know they're still friends. But Trump did not like when Sean Spicer was parodied on SNL as that bunny because Trump didn't think that was a masculine way of being attacked. The left understands how Trump works. Now listen. Criticism of politicians on our own side should not automatically be viewed as a test of loyalty. Criticism, the way I view criticism, is this is how you make people better, how you sharpen them. I want Trump to win. I want Trump to be in the White House. But the Trump campaign needs to be in tip-top condition to win this thing. What the Trump campaign is doing right now, let me describe the strategy that they're using. President Trump is actually punching to the right, while Kamala is pretending to move to the right. What I mean by this is Trump is disavowing Project 2025, pretending that it's too right-wing for him, while Kamala is pretending that she's strong on border security. Trump punching right to try to appeal to the center, Kamala pretending she's more right to try to appeal to the center. Now, yes, this always happens in a presidential cycle, in the general election, in those campaigns. Both candidates, the right and the left, pretend that they're more centrists. But that killer instinct the left has, that the Kamala Harris campaign is demonstrating, their thirst for victory, how do we defeat that? The antidote is the Trump campaign needs to be based. Don't scooch to the center. Be based. But in practicality, what does it mean to be based? Well, to start off with, the Trump campaign needs to play offense here. The Trump campaign can't be playing defense all the time. This is what I mean. I want to give you an example of how to respond. So yesterday, Kamala Harris at a campaign event suddenly unveiled that she has an urban accent when she's speaking to prospective black voters. Take a listen to this fake accent from Kamala, this brand new dialect she has.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
What? All of a sudden, Kamala Harris is supposed to have an urban accent. All of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that she speaks with somewhat of a black dialect. Listen, as Jason Whitlock said on my show on Monday, Kamala Harris is fake black. Her mother is Indian. Her father is from Jamaica. She has no family history or historical legacy in the discrimination that black people face in our country. None. She's also a child of privilege. She is fake. She is pandering. And my question would be, aren't black voters insulted by this? I would be. I'm insulted when politicians try to pander to me based on the fact that I'm a woman. Is this what Kamala Harris thinks black people care the most about? The way that she speaks? That's pretty insulting. The Trump campaign needs to be based about this. They need to, I posted that clip of Kamala Harris on X. It went viral because people think she's fake. Trump needs to be based and push this out the same way. Similarly, Kamala Harris, and this is an example of Kamala trying to scooch to the middle just by lying. She released the following ad comparing her record on the border to President Trump's. And again, it's outright lies, but this is what she's serving to the American people. Take a look at this.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
What an absolute liar. This is how the Trump campaign should respond. They should respond by reminding everyone that Kamala Harris is the border czar. Biden appointed her as the border czar. Kamala Harris admitted after a congressional resolution acknowledging her as border czar that her efforts at the border were critical to the Biden administration's immigration policy. Trump should remind everyone that 8 million illegal aliens have invaded our country through an open border while Kamala Harris is border czar, and Kamala Harris believes we should decriminalize the illegal crossing of our border. Also, you can thank Congress for that ad, even Republicans in Congress, because Republicans in Congress are so weak, they're so lame, that they allowed the Democrats to play a trick on them. The trick was presenting a bill, a piece of legislation that ostensibly had border security in it, but also included amnesty for illegal aliens in our country. Of course, Congress and Donald Trump had to disavow that bill because it was fake. It wasn't real. President Trump needs to play offense on this. This is what he should do. Trump and his team should take a page out of President George H.W. Bush's campaign playbook, and they should copy the Dukakis on crime model. You might remember this ad. Let's rewatch it. It is based.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
That is a perfect example of how to be based in politics. This should be easy for Trump, given Kamala's atrocious record. For example, here's a horrific story that Trump could highlight. This is an 8-year-old girl. She was murdered. She was raped in California. Her body was wrapped in plastic and thrown in a dumpster. And yet, her killer might be getting out of prison early next year. Why? Because criminals convicted in juvenile court in the state of California are released at age 25 thanks to progressive policies on crime like the ones Kamala Harris supports. If that hits you like a gut punch, it should. Yes, the Democrats have demonstrated that they have a killer instinct. If there's one thing we should learn from the J.D. Vance's weird narrative, is the Democrats are like sharks. They get just a whiff of blood and bam, they'll gut you. The only antidote here is for Republicans and conservatives to stop being gentle. Kamala Harris is a communist. She's dangerous. Don't underestimate her. Don't underestimate the mainstream media snow job to help her get into office. I hate to say this because I don't want to believe this, but it's true. Kamala Harris can win unless the Trump campaign is ardently playing offense. Like a soccer player that understands no matter what, he just has to get his foot on that ball somehow, again and again and again before he can score. Just get your foot on the ball. This is what the Trump campaign needs to do. Remember, it's be based or this country dies. All right, guys, I'm going to introduce you to my producer in just a second, but I want to read you a comment that one of you guys left me on Monday's episode. It's one of my favorite comments. It's from Bruno. He posted this on YouTube. He said, "Great. While Kamala was the border czar, the phrase is now stuck in my head. I'm going to be walking around all day tomorrow trying to delete it from my brain. Still love you though, Liz. Keep up the great work." Bruno, this is exactly what I'm hoping is happening across the country. I want the American people to have this resonating in their head. While Kamala was border czar, chaos, violence, and death. That would be the most amazing campaign trick in the world. Guys, make sure to leave me comments, and if you leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, I will give you a shout out on the show. So keep those coming. But without further ado, we're gonna play a little game of Devil's Advocate today, and I'm gonna bring on my producer. I wanna introduce him to you guys. Tim Meads, welcome to the show. Long time no talk.
Liz, thanks for having me. It's great to be on this side of the camera, and hello to Wheeler Nation. I love all of you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the reviews. Love all the comments. So keep them coming. Now, Liz, typically, I've got my MAGA hat and I've got my Heritage Guide to the Constitution and Tucker Carlson books, but today we're gonna put all of that to the side and kind of chuck it out the window there, and I'm gonna play the Devil's Advocate here. Hence that clip from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a great based movie, by the way, about the importance of family and Thanksgiving. Everyone should watch it. But I have a series of questions for you, some observations from a left-leaning perspective, and it'll be pretty easy to play a liberal. All I really need to do is somehow tie my point back to racism, sexism, and call you a bigot. So this should be a lot of fun, and whenever you want to get into it, we can kind of go at it. But I'll be playing the Devil's Advocate as a lib, and just a reminder, this is just an actor's portrayal.
I was just going to say, you better caveat this, that this is fake, or someone's going to think that you're a real lib.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead. Lay it on me.
All right. I'll just start here. So, Liz, I saw you the other day. You were on Chris Cuomo. I didn't catch all of it. I had to
that
run.
part's actually true.
But
you didn't catch all of it.
But my first question is to you, who are you to impose your religion on me and also millions of women? I as a liberal, I think women have the right to do with their body, what they want, and your view is
right.
No bueno.
So actually, it was totally fun to be on Chris Cuomo's show. By the way, I've been trying. He asked me like 6 months ago to be on his show, but I was pregnant and then I gave birth and on maternity leave, and we just now made it happen. But I suspected it would be a really fun battle because he and I are very ideologically opposed on almost every issue, but we both like to argue. And it was a heated debate. If you didn't watch it, I think we posted it on X, or at least a portion of it on X. But he gave this wild hypothetical that actually made me laugh in the middle of the segment. We were talking about abortion, and he was saying, you can't impose your religious belief that life begins at conception on the country in order to ban abortion. And he immediately took it to this hypothetical: what if America becomes a Muslim majority nation? What if they try to impose their religious beliefs on you? Which obviously he was just trying to dodge the question, because I was asking him, when does a human life begin? Because the answer to that is a human life begins at conception, and therefore that newly formed human being deserves all the rights that you and I deserve. And it's so funny to me because he's a pro. I would like to think I'm a pro, so I'm not going to let him get away with that. But he did make one comment that I did not get a chance to respond to because his producer was on in my ear telling me it was time for them to move on. But he said that in a secular nation like the United States, we can't allow our religious beliefs to become part of the law. And that's actually just not true, in the sense that our nation was never supposed to be a secular nation. I'm actually extremely based on this. I don't think that there's any such thing as secularism. I don't think that and this is sort of my issue with libertarianism too, but I don't think that there is a neutral playing field. I don't think that you can have an absence of any kind of morality or opinion or even religious belief in our culture or in our law. I think it is either our religious beliefs, which define morality, or our religious beliefs that acknowledge reality, or you have the absolutely opposing side, which is I'm not even talking about atheists. I'm talking about basically demons, Satan. All you have to do is look at Drag Queen Story Hour to know what I'm talking about, the Olympic ceremonies, etc. And I completely reject this idea that there even is a neutral playing field or a secular society. And we already have in our nation laws that acknowledge religion, but the religion is Christianity. Not just because we choose that, but because that's reality.
Gotcha. As a quick quip, as a lib, I'd argue drag queen story hours are a blessing of liberty. But moving on. So earlier, Liz, I saw you speak about undocumented immigrants, as I would call them. And, as a liberal, as a leftist, I think these undocumented immigrants, they're more American than you or I, and they just want a better way of life. And, there's always going to be a few bad apples in the bunch, but it's really important that we welcome them in here. And if they commit a crime, we remember that it's really more of a crime of need and not of want. And so I guess I'm just wondering, where's your compassion and how dare you close the border?
Sorry. We have to, next time we do this segment, you have to wear a pink wig and like a little beard with like a braid. We have to go fully into this segment, not just play acting the lib. You should be.
I'll just get
You have to be the character, be Tim the lib. That would be. This is already funny to me, but this would be the most hysterical thing. Where is my compassion? My compassion. And this is moving away from the levity for a moment. My compassion is with the victims of the horrific crimes that are committed against American citizens. We talked earlier in the show about a little girl who was brutally raped and murdered. That's not an isolated incident. I'm not sure if in that specific case, if her murderer was an illegal alien or not, but on Monday's show, we talked about some of these examples where illegal aliens who crossed our border and were deported, but then the Biden administration brought them back in, reversing that deportation. They murdered people, especially women. Women are the particular target of the sexual violence that we've seen increasing so much given our open border. So my compassion is for the people of this country. I understand, by the way, I am empathetic towards people who want to come to America. There's a reason why so many people want to come here. It's because it's not a horrible place like the left tells us. There's not a genocide about to be committed against marginalized peoples. Otherwise, no one would be trying to cross our border this way. Everyone would be trying to cross the border the other way. I am empathetic to the people that want to come here. I understand how it would be tempting for people who are not criminals to take advantage of our very loose border security and come here knowing that they're probably going to be allowed to live here and work here and build their life and their wealth here. But that's not really what's happening. What's happening right now is our border security is becoming this invitation for drug cartels, global criminal organizations, even terrorists who not just don't like us, who hate us, who seek to harm us. I mean, if you think about what happened in Israel on October 7th when Hamas terrorists invaded the state of Israel and murdered people, they did unspeakable things. They beheaded babies, they raped women, they shot elderly people point blank. There are people in the world, those same terrorists want to do that here. If they were given the opportunity, allowed the opportunity, they would do that to your family. They would do that to me and my family, my children. They would commit violence, horrific violence against us. And we are putting our communities, our neighborhoods, our families, our children in danger. That's where my primary compassion lies, because there's a way to structure our immigration policy so that the people who seek to be American because they actually believe in what America stands for, they want to enjoy the prosperity and the freedom that we at least used to stand for, there's a way that they can come here legally. But as long as we have the situation that we have now with this open border and this encouragement of illegal aliens coming here, my compassion is for the people who are harmed by this. And there are a lot of people, and that number will only grow if we let this continue.
All right, moving on to the next lib question, Tim the Lib question here. You know, I'm the son of Republicans, and I might vote for Republicans if they were just a little bit more to the center, if they were a little bit softer on immigration, or if they were pro-choice. And, you know, I really think Trump should move to the center if he wants to win over, you know, the center left and common sense Americans like me. What are your thoughts on that,
Well, I think
Liz?
he kind of already is, isn't he? I think Trump was a great president. I'm excited to vote for him again. One of my criticisms of Donald Trump is that he doesn't like criticism. I personally feel the opposite. I think criticism helps sharpen people. We talked about this in the monologue. I think criticism helps people improve and be their best self. That's why I'm kind of a critical person. You can ask the people in my life. For better or for worse, that's true. And I do not think it's a good strategy for the Trump campaign to try to move to the quote-unquote center on abortion, which basically means caving. Because when you're at the negotiating table when it comes to abortion, the only thing that you would have to compromise on is someone's life. And we are long past the point. I mean, you could argue that we were past the point even before Roe v. Wade, but we are now long past the point where there's any question, ambiguity, vagueness about when a human life begins. We know for a scientific fact that the moment of conception, when a sperm fuses with an egg, is the moment that a new person is formed. And there is simply, and it's a philosophical argument in a sense, because it has to be. The idea of anybody being a person and having rights is a philosophical argument, but there's no point other than the moment of conception where an unborn child, you can call this unborn child an embryo or a fetus. That doesn't make it less human. That's just a stage of development like a child or an adolescent or an adult. It's still a human being. But there's no point from conception till death that one magically becomes a person, except that moment of conception. It's not the first trimester. It's not the second trimester. It's not when the mother can feel movement. It's not when the baby exits the birth canal. All of these things are arbitrary things, right? One woman feels movement at 14 weeks. One woman feels movement at 18 weeks. That's just how your body was made, where your uterus is positioned. That's not an indication of whether that person is a human life or not. The same with birth. Obviously, the geographical location of the baby inside the body, outside the body, is not indicative of whether that baby has a beating heart and a brain and a soul. That baby is alive. That baby is a person. And we have to protect these people. We have to. We can't negotiate with their lives. We can't compromise and say, well, because the baby's big enough that it looks more like me than this younger baby, therefore I will arbitrarily bestow rights on one and deny rights to the other. It's not something that we're going to be able to compromise on, and something that we should compromise on if we want our country to continue. And I know that whenever we talk about abortion on this show, or even sometimes when I give speeches, it makes people uncomfortable. And the reason for that is because abortion is brutal, it's bloody, it's gruesome, and a lot of people listening will be like, Liz, I'm already pro-life, I don't need to hear about this because it's disgusting. And that's exactly why we need to talk about it, because the less that we talk about it, the more that the left defines what it is. They define it falsely as miscarriage care, as what are you going to do in an ectopic pregnancy? What are you going to do if your baby has some genetic anomaly that makes it likely that the baby will die soon after birth? They define abortion not by what abortion is, but by tragic circumstances that are either completely false, like the miscarriage narrative, or tragic and heartbreaking, but unfortunately, sometimes, very infrequently, reality, like a baby with a genetic anomaly. So I don't think the Trump administration should cave at all. I think that conservatives and pro-life activists should focus on educating the younger generation about what abortion actually is, because I think Live Action did a series of videos where they had an animated depiction of abortion, and they stopped people on the street and said, are you pro-abortion or are you pro-life? And the ones who said pro-abortion or pro-choice, they showed the animation of the video, and many people who had otherwise identified as pro-choice, after watching the animated video of what an abortion is, changed their mind because they didn't realize that it is. I mean, that it's so gruesome. Look up those videos. They're on Live Action's YouTube channel. They're something.
Wow. Well, Liz, you've convinced me. I'm no longer Tim the Lib. I'm back to being Tim the conservative. So that was great, and I'll go back behind the camera now, and we'll chat next week. So
all right,
thanks
Tim
so
the
much
Lib,
for having
guys,
me.
give him a round of applause. Tim the Lib, next time he shows up on the show, he's gonna have, I promise he's gonna have pink hair, maybe like some face tattoos. Libs do that too, right? Some face tattoos. We're not gonna ask you to get all kinds of weird piercings, but I do think maybe like, are you gonna hoist like the rainbow flag or something behind you next time?
Yeah, I'll
We'll work on it.
have.
We'll work on
it'll
it.
be a surprise.
Okay,
So, yeah.
guys, moving on
Yeah.
to the next
Oh,
segment.
yeah.
All right, our cultural hegemony segment. This phrase, cultural hegemony, was coined by the Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci. Yes, that Antonio Gramsci, who wrote the Prison Notebooks. In the Prison Notebooks, this document that was translated from Italian to English by none other than Mayor Pete Buttigieg's father, Joseph Buttigieg. In these Prison Notebooks, Gramsci explores the idea of communist or Marxist revolutions and which were successful, which were not successful, and why the ones that were successful were successful. And his conclusion is that the Marxist revolutions that were successful because first, the communist revolutionaries captured the culture. They captured what he called the civil institutions, which is the culture, education, the family, et cetera, instead of focusing on first toppling a governmental institution. Gramsci's premise was that once the culture was captured, once the civil institutions were captured, then the government would fall as well. Now, if this sounds familiar, because this is what we're seeing in our country, then yes, you're correct. That's an accurate observation from you. This is exactly what we are seeing in this country. And that is why perhaps you've heard of Ballerina Farm. Ballerina Farm is an extremely famous social media account. She has 17 million followers online. That's on Instagram and on TikTok, on the various platforms. They combined 17 million. Now, Ballerina Farm, I confess, this is not an influencer that I followed until she became very famous for this clip. She competed in what's called the Mrs. America pageant. Now, Ballerina Farm is a married mother. I believe she's around my age. She's 34 or 35. She has 8 children and she lives on a farm. That's the basis of her social media accounts, is showing the life running this farm, homesteading. She has a business that emanates from this farm. But 12 days after she gave birth to her 8th child, she competed in a beauty pageant. And in this beauty pageant, she was asked what makes her feel most empowered as a woman. And her answer was something that, when I heard it, I cheered for her. This is what she said. Take a listen.
When have you felt the most empowered?
I have felt this feeling 7 times now as I bring these sacred souls to the earth after I hold that newborn baby in my arms. The feeling of motherhood and bringing them to the earth is the most empowering feeling I have ever felt.
And if that doesn't give you chills, if that doesn't warm your heart, well, then you might be one of those childless cat ladies that JD Vance describes. It was beautiful. Think of how many women don't say anything about how empowering motherhood is, how wonderful it is to have a baby. So I became familiar with Ballerina Farm through this video. I think we talked about it here on the show. Well, recently, fast forward to last week, Ballerina Farm invited a journalist, or allowed a journalist, to come and write a profile on her, on their family, on their farm, on her status as a quote-unquote trad wife. Now, when I say her quote-unquote status as a trad wife, the mainstream media like to portray Ballerina Farm as a trad wife. I don't know that she necessarily identifies with that label, but this article shows you exactly what Antonio Gramsci was talking about. When you have an influencer as powerful as Ballerina Farm, who is honoring and celebrating the things that matter most: family, marriage, motherhood, nurturing children, shepherding souls, well, the communists and the Marxists freak out. This is one of the nastiest articles that I've ever read. I actually didn't much care about Ballerina Farm. That's not really the type of influencer that I personally like to follow until this article, and now I am all about her. I want to give you a couple of examples of the blatant bigotry against this woman in the article. I'm going to bring this article up. Read you a couple of lines. So this is from The Times. The article is titled, "Meet the Queen of the Trad Wives and Her 8 Children." The subtitle says, Hannah Nealman, known to her 9 million followers as Ballerina Farm, milks cows, gives birth without pain relief, and breastfeeds at beauty pageants. Is this an empowering new model of womanhood or a hammer blow for feminism? I would argue that it's good to be a hammer blow for feminism, but of course, this writer is a radical feminist. Here are some of the examples of things said about Ballerina Farm, these digs against her. Nealman, she writes, is the most well-known trad wife, despite having never attached herself to the movement or even used the term. How does she feel about it? We were already together doing what we were doing, Daniel, her husband, replies instead. And then trad wife came along. We can't help it. This is what we are. If we're trad dad, trad wife, so be it. So what is that? What is that? She is portraying, this writer is portraying the husband of this household intentionally, trying to make him seem, because she wants her readers to suffer from perception is reality. She's trying to make it seem like the husband is answering, interrupting his wife, speaking for her, meaning being domineering. She's portraying him like that on purpose. There's no indication that he's like that. Then the article goes on to quote Nealman saying, our first few years of marriage were really hard. We sacrificed a lot, Nealman says, but we did have this vision, this dream. And Daniel interrupts, we still do. What kind of sacrifices, I ask her. Nealman responds, well, I gave up dance, which was hard. You give up a piece of yourself, and Daniel gave up his career ambitions. Then the writer notes, I look out at the vastness and don't really agree. Daniel wanted to live in the great western wilds, so they did. He wanted to farm, so they did. He likes date nights once a week, so they go. They have a babysitter on those evenings. He didn't want nannies in the house, so there aren't any. The only space earmarked to be Nealman's own, a small barn she wanted to convert into a ballet studio, ended up becoming the kids' schoolroom. Of all the nerve to try to comment on these people's marriage, the ins and outs, when they are so generous as to give her time. Again, the key word here, cultural hegemony. The Marxist left cannot stand if a man and a woman are happily married, if they are fulfilling traditional gender roles. The woman is having babies, the husband is providing and running a business, if they're homeschooling their children, if they are happy. This writer goes on to portray Daniel as being a mansplainer. The writer goes on to say, I'm just trying to get a moment alone with Nealman, but a husband and a kid constantly interrupting, I never get a chance. The writer says, I wanted to ask her about birth control. We were surrounded by so many of her children, and Daniel is back in the room now too. Do you, I pause and look at her fixedly, plan pregnancies? No, Daniel said. When he says no, Nealman responds gently, it's very much a matter of prayer for me, etc., etc. What an absolutely nasty article. I read this very late at night a couple of nights ago, and you can just tell that feminism is a pernicious fraud that hates women by the fact that when women choose to be feminine, like Hannah Nealman, choose to be wives, choose to be mothers, and actually like it, feminist heads explode. Again, I never really cared about Ballerina Farm one way or the other before this. I know there was a lot of controversy. Is it empowering or is it unhealthy to compete in beauty pageants 12 days postpartum? And I kind of always thought, blah, blah, who cares really? If she wants to do it, okay. Her husband comes from a wealthy family. That was another fake controversy. So what? It just felt like very boring controversy about her to me. But now I am all about this woman because some bitter, agenda-driven, man-hating, disrespectful, derogatory feminist deliberately falsely portrayed Hannah as unhappy, falsely portrayed her marriage as unequal, falsely portrayed her children as annoying, falsely portrayed her life as unfulfilled, her life as fake, because Hannah's life is family. And there is nothing feminists hate more than family. In case you ever forget, feminists were never about choice for women. Nobody will more viciously gut a happily married mother who's happy with those choices than a feminist who thinks nobody should be allowed to be fulfilled by doing what God created women to do. And then, of course, we have the male feminists, like Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who was on the White Dudes for Kamala Zoom call. Of all the loser things a guy can do, can you imagine? That should be like on dating profiles, that should be on the negatives. Like, don't date this guy. He was on a White Dudes for Kamala Zoom call. Pete Buttigieg played the part of a male feminist, a pro-abortion male feminist, and this is what he said. Take a look.
I'm so glad she has made freedom the theme of her campaign, because I think in so many ways that's what's at stake. And yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A after Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care. Men are more free.
Well, at least he's admitting it. What we have been saying for a long time, that men like abortion because it allows them to use women. Liberal men like abortion because it allows them to abuse women. Killing your children in the womb of the woman that you had sex with sets you free, Mayor Pete? Of all the disgusting takes, what really makes a man? Refusing to accept responsibility or masculine virtue, treating women like objects is what freedom is all about? It is not. What really makes a man is providing for the woman he loves, treating her with respect, and loving the children that he creates with his wife. But we all know that. Guys, make sure that you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or on youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. Or there's certain things we're not allowed to say on YouTube, so go over to blazetv.com/Liz, sign up there to get all the good, juicy information that social media tries to censor. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.